Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly podcast about everything mid-century and how to bring the mid-century vibe to your everyday life.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the mid-20th century then and now. We're your hosts, Jackie.
And Gonzalo, thanks again for joining us today.
So, Gonzalo, how was your week?
Good. Okay, so we recently had some really good weather, and because we also recently released our episode on the Jeep, I was inspired to remove the top and the doors of my Jeep. And we had nice enough weather that I was able to take the doors and the roof off. Well, I took the roof off on Friday, and I took the doors off Saturday morning, and then I drove without roof or doors all weekend, and which is a little scary because I have no wing mirrors. And then I put the doors back on Sunday night because I didn't want to leave my car parked at school without doors, even though I trust my students and it's in a very visible part of the parking lot. But I'm just gonna leave the doors on. So I put the doors back on, but kept the roof off, and it was joyful. I loved it.
That sounds lovely.
Yes, I put the roof back on because it was supposed to rain on Thursday, and it didn't, but it got hot again, and then I took off the roof off this morning again.
How did you find getting the doors on and off was by yourself, or did you have help?
I was by myself, and it was the easiest thing ever. It took me 15 minutes total from opening the doors to getting the stuff out. And I know that because I timed myself.
Oh, good for you.
Yes.
Getting them back on, I think, is trickier because you have to line up the hinges and they're not light.
No, they're not light. They're not heavy, though, either. I felt like it was easier than expected. It was harder to remove them, I think, because I didn't listen to YouTube, because YouTube says to take the bolt of the hinge off first and then take the stopper and the cables out. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm gonna do it my way. And I took the cable and the stopper out first and then went back for the bolts. But because the stopper holds the door without it flopping against the Jeep, um, like I was fighting the door in the incline of my driveway. I should have followed the instructions. With the instructions, I would have been much faster. But yeah, I loved it, and I have to attribute me actually doing that to our episode on the Jeep with our guest host that week, Alex.
That was a very good episode, by the way. It was a fun listen. It was really interesting listening to the show without me in it. Because it still sounded like our show. It was just like another person's voice. It was really entertaining to because I just knew you were talking about Jeeps, and I just went on vacation and didn't think about it at all. So I got to listen to it fresh, and that was actually kind of fun for me. So
Yes.
yay.
So how was your week?
My week was good. I'm still basically trying to get back into real life after vacation. So the reason I was gone that week is because I was in Disney World for an entire week, Saturday to Saturday, and I had an amazing time and did some kind of mid-century thing. So at Hollywood Studios, there's a walkthrough attraction called One Man's Dream, and it's all about the history of Walt Disney, and it has some models for Disneyland Park and stuff in there. So it was basically like walking through our Disneyland history episode, which was really neat. So I took some pictures and I'll share those later. And I also I've always wanted to eat here and haven't yet. But there's a restaurant also at Hollywood Studios called the 50s Primetime Cafe. And it's basically like a million different little 50s kitchens. Instead of regular tables, they're all diner tables or booths, but they're like in their own corner with a television playing old
that's cool.
black and white Mickey Mouse Club things, and they've got room dividers with actual mid-century stuff, I guess, super glued to it. But I went around this place and took a lot of pictures of that too. But it was basically everywhere you turn was another fully decorated 1950s kitchen.
Oh, that's fun.
with like different curtains and different, like, it was just really cool. And they like the waitresses are all call themselves like aunt whatever, and they pretend that you're at like a big family reunion, and but all the other tables are just like your cousins who are also here eating dinner at the family reunion. And if you eat all your vegetables, they give you a sticker that says Clean Plate Club, and it's really
Oh,
cute. So that was like the most fun ever. But other than that, it was just, I just had like a really great time on vacation. But then I caught a really bad cold, so the week back from Disney didn't count. Like, it was basically like that was magical fantasy life, and then all of a sudden I'm back in real life and I have a cold and everything sucks, and it is not magical compared
mm.
to, it was like very like, that was vacation life, this is real life.
Oh, I hate the return to real life following
It
a
was
vacation.
like a particularly bad, but I have recovered from my cold, and instead of being sad that I'm no longer at Disney, I'm just grateful for the good experiences I had at Disney and looking forward to the next trip. And um, so everything's back to normal. Had a great Halloween and ready to take on the world, and I'm ready for November.
Well, November is my favorite month of the year, so
Birthday month!
birthday month. Yay! I'm old.
So, now that we're all caught up, today's episode is another sort of compilation episode where we're going to go over some mid century technology that was revolutionary when it was first introduced, and then have either evolved beyond recognition or no longer exist at all anymore in our modern world.
Yep. So all these things were like huge during the mid-century, changing the way we did things or making things easier for us. But the question is, what happened to this tech? So some of it got replaced with newer and better versions of it. Some evolved into things we still use today.
So, first up, the Polaroid camera from 1948. It was known as the Land camera after creator Edwin Land, who had developed Polaroid, which was a polarizing polymer, which was first used in the development of polarized sunglasses. So the camera, as you may know, took photos and developed them instantly through the use of Polaroid picture roll land film.
I have a Polaroid 350, which is from like 1969,
Nice.
which I bought at a garage sale for $5 and have never used.
I had one, a new one, in the 90s, and barely used it because the film was so expensive. Like, basically, I got the camera, but I was never going to get new film ever. So it was like, here are your 15 photos. And and use them wisely. It was basically like the advice I was given when I was given those as a gift.
And I've seen you go through a disposable 24 picture camera in a matter of minutes, if not
So you can
seconds.
imagine the restraint it required to really
Yes.
make the Polaroids count.
Yes. 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 Yes.
The Polaroid that most people think of when they think of Polaroid is the Sun 600, which closed in on itself. That was the same kind of shape mine had. It like folded in. So Polaroid, the company, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 2001 and again in 2008, and then announced they would finally stop producing the cameras and film in 2009. The current millennial fascination with retro technology has led to attempts at reviving the Polaroid. The current Polaroid available at the time of recording is the Polaroid i2. You could also kind of credit the instant photo concept with the development of the digital camera, which provides instant view of the photo, unlike traditional film cameras where you have to find out once you develop it what your picture looks like.
True. And without the Polaroid, we would not have the iconic and, may I say, literary masterpiece that is Outcast's Shake It Like a Polaroid picture.
There is also that.
Yes. So we also had the videotape recorder from 1951. So in 1951, the Ampex Corporation developed a videotape recorder, or a VTR, which could capture live images from television cameras by converting the information to data saved on a magnetic tape. This was probably done through a process known as magic, because I don't know how it happened.
Was this for personal or professional use?
So this was for both.
Like, this isn't a camera that records to film. Like, this is
No,
recording from the television specifically.
Yes, this is recording from the television, recording really from television signal. So I don't believe that this would have been like something that everybody could have in their house and like plug into their set. This would be something that was at a television station so that they could record their programming.
Neat.
And the first VTR sold for $50,000 in 1956 monies.
Yikes.
So not a cheap piece of equipment. So the impact that it had on the mid-century was that the VTR led the Sony Corporation to develop the video cassette recorder in the early 1970s. So that's the VCR, which we all know and love. And this cassette format became popular and the standard way of recording and turned the world into the video home system, or the VHS.
I had no idea that's what that stood for.
Yep, that's what it stands
Oh.
for. VHS is a video home system, and the VCR is the video cassette recorder. So the VHS tape is the video home system tape, which is a type of cassette that would go into the VCR.
Neat.
And VHS was a popular format for home and video store rentals, which sadly have also gone the way of old things. Although there is one Blockbuster still left.
It's in like Minnesota or something, right?
I believe Oregon,
Oh, okay.
but I don't know. It's somewhere in one of those states. Listeners, if you live near the Blockbuster, please send us a picture on Instagram because I want to see if it's actually real. But the VTR, the videotape recorder, has its impact also on today because after inspiring and creating the VHS, the eventually the VHS was replaced by the DVD, which is now also kind of obsolete. Video recording was then replaced by digital format when TiVo came out in 1997, which became like the first digital recorder for at-home TV. And then that kind of morphed into away from just TiVo and any sort of home DVR or digital video recorder. Today, I don't even know if we record anymore. I mean, most people just watch TV via streaming services. And while my parents still have multiple VHSs, I don't.
I actually we have a combo VCR DVD player for emergencies or things that aren't streaming, so we can watch tapes and DVDs. But as far as recording live TV is definitely not a thing for me anymore because everything I watch is digital now. The closest thing I have to like recording a digital version of something is buying it on Amazon digital instead of renting it, so that I can just watch it every year if they take it off of Netflix or whatever.
So I remember in high school setting up my VCR because we had a fancy one with a timer. So
Ooh.
which is the same one that still exists in my parents' house, by the way. But I could program it, and I had it programmed for Wednesdays at 7. When whatever show I watched, I don't want to say it because I don't want to get my age out. But I would watch that. Or maybe it was Thursdays. It was Thursdays. But I would record that show because sometimes things came up and I wouldn't be at the house. So this way I could record the show that I wanted to watch and then watch it at my leisure.
Very good memories. So another bit of television-related technology that is gone forever now are rabbit ear antennas. Well, maybe not gone forever. I guess we'll find out. So these are from 1953. They were invented by Marvin P. Middlemark, which is a very good name. They allowed televisions to improve reception via antennas that could be placed near the televisions. They were so named because they were placed on top of a television set, and they were two metal rods coming out of the center top of the TV, and they looked like rabbit ears. A lot of times, the etiquette was that the youngest person in the family had to move around and hold onto the antenna to improve the reception.
I've been there.
Although antennas went out of style as most people got cable and satellite TV, they're making a comeback in a digital version now because fewer people are buying cable subscriptions. So most people now are foregoing streaming services even and returning to Air TV, which is bringing back the antenna on the TV.
Yep. Growing up, our TV set had a little like cylinder on top of it, and it came with the antenna. And the antenna had like the opposite, and it would click into the TV set, so that it would just kind of stick from the top. Nowadays, I recently had to buy one for my parents, and I have one in my house. The antennas are a little different. They don't sit on top of the TV anymore because TVs are so small and so thin. The digital antennas have like a I don't know, it looks like a little iPad without a screen, and then the antennas come out from the bottom of that. Um, and I still have it. And I know several people are buying them. I went to the store, to Target or Best Buy, to buy one, and when I asked for antenna, they knew exactly what I was talking about, and they did not look at me weird like I was an old fart.
Yeah, so that means they must be common.
Yes, and it helps. I mean, I watch the news every morning, and I use that.
I Yeah, I haven't watched live TV in 15 years. I don't actually know what's going on anymore.
I get a lot of channels. Like there's so many channels that are just flying about our heads.
Huh.
I only watch the one with the news, but I could watch other ones.
Yeah, maybe I'll give it a shot. All right, so you got the next one.
Yes. So the next one is specific, and once I say it, I'm sure most of you will have the picture in your minds. But it is the glass door phone booth from the mid 1950s. And while phones really are a product pre mid century, the phone booth really came to its own in the 1950s. So, mini history on the telephone started circa 1876, becoming an exclusive service for the relatively wealthy. Coin operated public phones were starting to be a thing in the late 1890s, but required an attendant. The modern payphone created by William Gray was a machine that collected the cost of a call without the aid of an attendant. And William Gray got this idea to create a public use telephone because he was at his house with his wife who fell ill, and he had no way of contacting a hospital. So he actually had to run down the street to a factory where he knew there was a phone, and when he got help. But it kind of inspired the creation of a public phone for him. So the glass booth, glass and metal, replaced any sort of wooden boxes in the 1950s, and the payphone booth began to take the shape that we're more familiar with. Which, if you guys remember them, they had glass walls with a little folding door for privacy. And as of 2012, there was still one left in La Crescent, Minnesota. And I just love the idea of a high schooler today finding a phone booth and trying to figure out how to use it. And they became kind of a source of vandalism. Glass and metal are very easy to break
And draw on.
and draw on. Yes. And so today, the payphone has kind of left the everyday thanks to the introduction of mobile phones in the late 1970s and their growth into the cell phones, smartphones that we know today. By 2020, there were only 4 phone booths remaining in New York City, all in the Upper West Side, all with no incoming calls available, but do offer free outgoing calls. And the city has pledged to still maintain these.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Others that are left have been converted into the Wi Fi hotspots. Phones have been removed. In the UK, the red telephone box is being removed, provided that there is another one at least 400 meters away.
Hmm.
What was really cool about the iconic red telephone box in the UK is that while they are decommissioned from being phones, they have been converted into other services such as small neighborhood libraries or automated defibrillator cabinets.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, those are super iconic. I'm glad they're hanging on to the boxes at least, even if they don't have
Yeah,
phones in them.
yeah, they definitely are. There was a payphone in the gas station down the street from my house, which during the great freeze of 2020 I tried to use, and I waddled my way over through the ice and snow to get to the payphone, falling twice. And I made it to the gas station, and the receiver was broken.
Aw. Yeah, I went to London with a group of friends in 2007, and we found one of those phone booths, and we decided to see how many of us could fit in it at once. And I'm pretty sure we got like 8 people in there. They were not small. Anyway, so next bit of tech is the slide projector from the 1950s. The 35 millimeter slide was actually invented in 1935 following the Great Depression. Pre mid century, a lot of large format magic lanterns, as they were called then, existed as projectors for different kinds of slides and images. But basically, the slide projector that we're talking about here, that were popularized in the 50s, had spots for each slide to slid in a row, and the projector would move each slide up to the light when it was its turn, and then move on to the next one. The image on the slide is projected when light hits the film, and it enlarges the image as it is projected onto a flat surface. A very famous version of it from the 1960s is Kodak's carousel projector. And instead of a straight tray, the slides are arranged in a circular carousel. This one is featured heavily in a very, very, very good episode of Mad Men, and possibly Don Draper's best pitch of the series. Don decided to call it the carousel. It was called the wheel. In the episode, the Kodak came to them with the wheel projector, and he renamed it to the carousel. So we have Don Draper to thank for that. But anyway, the carousel projector came out in the 60s and sales exploded. Families would have their vacation photographs made into slides to show friends. And I've always wanted to bore my friends with something like that. We really need to bring that back.
My family has a slide projector, and we have boxes upon boxes of slides from the late 70s and early 80s where my sisters were growing up.
Have you had people over specifically to make them sit on your couch and watch your slides for 3 hours?
Not that I can recall.
I really want to do that. That sounds like fun to me. But that's really only fun for the host. And you just like hand everyone a cocktail and be like, okay, look at, here's me in front of the Eiffel Tower. Here's me in front of the Eiffel Tower closer to it. Here's me with a croissant next to the, like, anyway, that, I want to have one of those parties. Schools would also, at this time, use slides in their presentations. This was the main way to have visuals in a presentation during the mid-century and going well into the 80s and 90s.
Actually, I had a college professor who used slide projectors. She would use two projectors side by side, so that she would have two photos on the screen. And she would use these to show us the buildings we were discussing. She was our survey of history professor.
Very cool. So the modern version of this was basically PowerPoint in the late 80s, paving the way for the end of slide projectors because we found a new, faster way to make visuals for presentations. Digital storage for media in the early 2000s replaced slides for home use, like vacation photos are all digital now. Schools these days use Google Slides or PowerPoint.
I also have a quick comment for all of my coworkers listening. You know who you are. PowerPoint rules, Google Slides rule. So another tech from the mid-century is the electronic calculator from about 1961. So the calculator is not technically mid-century. As far as 2000 BCE, we have the abacus used by the Sumerians and the Egyptians. Sorry, history teacher here, remember? And that became the slide rule in the 17th century, allowing for more rapid multiplication and division, and several mechanical machines leading up the rest of history up until 1948, when we had the Curta calculator, which is a pocket-sized machine that could add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Though lumpy, it could fit in a pocket. It looks a little bit like a fist-sized cylinder.
Neat.
Yeah. Now, during World War II, large room-sized calculating computers were capable of solving a large class of numerical problems. An example would be ENIAC, which is the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, which was a room-sized calculator, effectively. The more modern calculator, which is what came out of really the mid-century, is called ANITA, which is an acronym that stands for a new inspiration to arithmetic or accounting. And that one came out in 1961. And this push button layout, where the only moving parts are the buttons themselves, everything else is done in a computer board. So all the mathematical stuff is done electronically. And it had a little illuminated 12 place display. and it is the first desktop calculator. And it's sold in Europe for 355 pounds or 1,000 US dollars in 1961, which today would be about 4,800 pounds or 8,000 US dollars.
Dang.
Yes. So imagine getting yourself a calculator for that amount of money. Today, the calculator kept evolving thanks to Wang Laboratories and Hewlett Packard. In today's world, who really uses a standalone calculator? I mean, we all have
Yeah.
calculators in our cell phones, in our computers. Um, the only time that I've ever used a calculator, okay, let me take that back. I used one the other day because I have one and I wanted to do math, and it was much faster than having my phone calculator.
See, that's who uses it, people who are in a hurry and happen to have one.
Yes, and I have it right here in my drawer. But also at school, when we took the PSAT, we had to give our students calculators.
Yeah, the last time I probably used a calculator was pre-cell phone or pre-smartphone times, because now I just have one in my pocket all the time. But graphing calculators was a thing. When we were in school, I guess kids these days aren't required to buy one or use them for geometry class or whatever we used it for.
I have no idea, but I remember saving up my allowance so that I could buy a TI-83 calculator.
Texas Instruments is like right down the street from me. Well, not really, it's in Richardson, but I used to drive by it on my way to college and shake my head thinking about the graphic calculators.
I very vividly remember never using it for math and only using it for games.
Yes, because there's always like one really smart kid in every class who figured out how to get games on the calculator.
Yes.
They didn't come with them.
I still have my TI-83.
I wonder if there's one at my parents' house still somewhere. I'm sure it's somewhere. Good time. And lastly, one more bit of outdated tech from this time period is the floppy disk drive, 1967. So this drive was created by IBM as a drive to allow the connection of an 8-inch disk for computer data use. Eventually, this became the 5.25-inch diskette, which was termed floppy because of the flexible plastic packaging. They just kept getting smaller, so then there was a 3.5-inch diskette, and it stopped being floppy at this point, and the storage capacity increased to 1.44 megabytes. Yeah, I know.
That's nothing.
That's nothing. And they were produced until 2011! Exclamation
That's
point on the
it's,
script.
that blows my mind.
I cannot believe it has no storage space at all. Like, why were people buying them in 2011?
I don't know. We used it in. I mean, I know that we graduated well before 2011 from high school, but I remember using the 3.5 disc to like save my projects because USB
No, man,
sticks
that
were
was
just
all No, it was all CDs. There's no way you were still using floppy disks when we graduated high school.
because I couldn't burn a CD with data at school. I had to use a floppy disk if I wanted to work in one of those 3 computers each classroom had.
You didn't use thumb drives?
No, I didn't have a thumb drive. I didn't have an
Maybe I was
iPod either.
fancy. I could have sworn like I was at home burning mixed CDs on CDs, and at school, if I needed to bring data back and forth, I used a thumb drive that
Oh,
my
you
dad got for
definitely
free
burn
from work.
CDs because I'm pretty sure I've got somewhere a CD that you've made.
But I think I also saved files on them, but I don't think I used a floppy disk since we got rid of the computer that we used for like dial-up internet. That's crazy that they were still produced up through 2011. That's really cool. They don't even make computers with CD drives anymore.
False.
Really? Oh, good. I heard that they completely discontinued them, and that to me seems silly. But I guess I out.
I have a Lenovo desktop computer in my classroom, and it has a floppy drive. Not floppy drive. Let me rephrase it. It has a CD drive.
Yeah, this the computer you use. Does your MacBook have one?
Oh yeah, no, the one I'm using right now, my Air barely has. Doesn't even have a USB drive.
Wow. Well, the significance of the floppy disk on today, mainly the only memory of it left is the save button on most programs still uses a little picture of a floppy disk as the save symbol. So that's all that's left of it today.
Yeah, I want to find a disc and take it to my students and be like, "Do y'all know what this is?" And hope that someone says it's the save button on Word.
They probably would. You should do that. That's exactly what he'll say.
I need to find one. I don't think I have any in my house, although who knows?
Well, that was just a nice reflection on some out of date technology that, while totally gone or mostly gone today, was very, very important in the mid century and worth talking about.
Yep.
But that brings our main topic segment to a close, which means it is time for our etiquette segment. And it is your turn to bring an etiquette segment. So, what have you got for us this week?
So today's etiquette segment comes from the book titled "History Behind Gentlemanly Action" and centers around how a gentleman should behave around women. Jackie, did you know that there's a correct way for a gentleman to escort a woman?
Vaguely, I think I know where you're going with this, but go ahead and tell us.
So this etiquette rule has its start in the medieval world, but became the cornerstone in mid-century courting scene, where gentlemen were expected to behave as gentlemen in public when courting a woman. And I'm talking about how a gentleman offers his arm and which arm he offers when escorting a woman through public. So, in when a man escorted his partner, the traditional etiquette rule was to offer his left arm so that the woman would be on his left side. And the history behind this is rooted in the medieval ages when a gentleman would escort a woman on his left side. So, should a threat arise or a woman's honor needing defending, the man would have his sword hand, which traditionally was his right hand, free, giving him quick access to his sword, which would be holstered on his left.
Cool.
So this became a mid-century staple, especially as couples routinely walked places together instead of being accompanied by like ladies in waiting or valets. When indoor, it became common. When outdoors, it became a way to protect the lady from traffic or mud splashing, etc. Because typically, when you walk on the left side of someone, you are between the road and the person.
So, you didn't say what I was thinking you would say when you were talking about medieval times, because I always heard back then the women walked on the outside and the man walked closer to the buildings because people would dump stuff out of the windows into
Uh-huh.
the street, and you want that to land on the man, not the woman.
Interesting.
But you're saying that the man stands closer to traffic, so the lady's safer on the inside of the sidewalk.
But that is mid-century, starting in the mid-century,
Yeah,
not
so
in the
that
medieval
must be the
time.
modern version of it. So, but I like that either way, you're protecting the lady from splashing
Yes.
of various kinds.
So what do you think about this etiquette rule?
I like that idea. Being a small person, like the idea of hiding behind a larger shield in times of splashing and danger. While you're not necessarily keeping your right hand free for sword fights anymore, everyone agreeing on one arm seems like it'll be less awkward. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of like it, but
Yeah.
I'm old fashioned. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a situation where you're being escorted, I feel like having an agreed upon arm makes it just easier for everybody. So I say keep.
Yeah. I agree. I think we should keep it as well.
Well, yeah, or that wasn't even words. Well, great. So that about wraps up our episode for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you want to get in touch, send us an email at info.mcliving@gmail.com or send us comments, edits, future show ideas on Instagram at MCL Podcast. Please make sure to rate us and write a review for our podcast to let us know how we're doing, and it also helps us stand out in the podcast algorithms.
Awesome. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.